The phone buzzed. I read it once, then again. I know you bought the house, but don't come for Christmas. You'll ruin the vibe. Below it, another drop your key at the mailbox before noon. My fingers tightened around the mug. Ceramic scraped against my palm. Then it slipped. It hit the tile. A sharp crack echoed through the kitchen. Coffee spread out fast, reaching the corners before I moved. I didn't say a word. I just stood there. Steam rose. My socks soaked through. The mug had cracked clean down the side. Not shattered, just split. Like it didn't want to break all the way. I grabbed the rag from the sink. Wiped slowly. The phone screen stayed lit. I let it dim on its own. On the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a pear, was the receipt I printed last month. Certified copy. Property title reissue. No reason to keep it displayed now. I pulled the magnet off. Folded the paper in half, then in half again. Slipped it into the drawer by the stove. The coffee had stopped steaming. I scooped up the mug halves and carried them to the sink. Washed each piece under cold water, dried them. Then I placed them on the windowsill, side by side. Outside, frost clung to the edge of the porch railing. Across the street, the Fletchers had already parked a rental SUV. Company was coming. Lights were going up. Inside, it was quiet. I turned off the burner. Tossed the wet rag in the bin. My hand rested briefly on the counter. Then I walked down the hall, opened the closet, and took out the cardboard file box from the top shelf. The one I hadn't touched in 4 years. I set it on the kitchen table, sat down, and opened the lid. I lifted the curtain with 2 fingers. Just enough to see the line of cars easing up the street. Headlights cut across the frost. Doors slammed. Laughter carried. Someone whistled for the valet. Caleb's house, my old house, glowed like a showroom. Gold trim along the gutters. Wreaths on every window. Music humming beneath it all. They'd rehearsed this evening, I could tell. I stayed where I was in the front room of Mrs. Langford's place. She'd invited me over when she saw me walking alone earlier. Said her daughter wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. I told her I just needed a quiet corner. She didn't ask more. Across the street, guests stepped out in coats that caught the light. Caleb opened the door wide, held out his hand like he was welcoming investors to a launch. His smile was sharp, practiced. He raised a glass. I could read his lips, even from here, Merry Christmas, everyone. Then Tessa drifted into view. Dress pressed, hair curled. She leaned close to a cluster of women and said something. One of them laughed, then another. Their shoulders shook, and then I caught it. It's so peaceful this year without the clutter. My breath hitched, just once, quick like I'd swallowed wrong. I lifted the cup in my hand, pretended to sip. It was empty. I held it anyway. No one in that house looked toward the window. No one wondered where I was. Caleb popped another bottle. Foam spilled down his wrist. Tessa dabbed it with a napkin and kissed his cheek like she'd earned the moment. I let the curtain fall a little, but not all the way. In my coat pocket, the folded Christmas card pressed against my palm. Inside it was the notarized envelope I'd prepared 3 weeks ago, the one he never opened because I never handed it over. The music rose bright, smooth, rehearsed. The kind that fills silence before real conversations start. The kind that covers cracks. I lowered the curtain fully. The room dimmed. My hand stayed on the fabric a moment longer, holding it in place as if it might lift on its own. Then I stepped back from the window, the empty cup still warm in my grip, and walked toward the hallway where my coat waited. I pushed the door open with my hip. 2 grocery bags hugged tight in my arms. The heater was on too high again. I was sweating under my coat. Tessa didn't look up from her phone. You forgot almond milk. Again. I set the bags down. 1 apple rolled out, hit the floor. spun once, then disappeared under the fridge. She sighed. I guess I'll just use water. Whatever. Caleb walked in, saw me, saw her, said nothing, took a soda from the fridge and leaned on the counter like he hadn't heard a thing. Tessa looked at him, then back at me. Don't worry. When we refinance, we'll hire a delivery service. I didn't answer, just nodded once. Tight. My hand stayed on the bag. My knuckles pale. They kept talking around me, planning renovations, swapping ideas about color palettes and equity and creating space. Not once did they ask if I wanted to be part of it, not even out of courtesy. I picked up the receipt that had fallen out folded. It slipped it in my coat pocket. My back felt stiff. I left the apple under the fridge. Later that night, I opened the drawer in the hallway, third one, down the one that always stuck, and took out the folder I'd labeled years ago. Final copy. Deed retained. It was heavier than I remembered. Inside, original signatures. County stamp. Proof. I ran my fingers along the edges, read each line like it might have changed since the last time. It hadn't. I was still the owner. Not Caleb, not Tessa. Me. I didn't return the folder to the drawer. I placed it on my desk instead. Left the lamp on, pulled the chair back. Let it sit in the open just once. In the hallway, I heard them laughing at something on TV. Their voices blending hers, always a bit louder. I sat down, opened the folder again, and this time I didn't skim. I read it line by line, page by page, until every word landed. Then I reached for a pen, clicked it once, and underlined one sentence near the end. I brought out the extra set of cutlery. Placed it on the sideboard. No one noticed. The table was already full, laughing, clinking half-full glasses. Tessa floated from one end to the other, pouring wine, touching shoulders, guiding voices. Every seat had a name card. None of them mine. I stood with a paper napkin folded in my hand, still waiting. Tessa glanced over, then turned back to the group. Caleb finally looked up. We just didn't expect so many to RSVP. You're fine, right, Mom? I nodded once. Small. Quick. I turned and walked to the kitchen, opened the oven, took out the mashed potatoes, now lukewarm, scooped some onto my plate. Didn't reheat them. I ate, standing my back to the fridge. Fork in one hand, plate in the other. The light above the stove buzzed faintly. I chewed slow. No salt. Voices from the dining room floated in. Tessa telling a story about her trip to Napa. Someone laughed too loud. A bottle popped. Caleb made a toast, something about growth, legacy, vision. No one noticed I wasn't there. I placed my fork on the edge of the sink, rinsed the plate, dried it, stacked it away. My purse sat on the kitchen bench. I reached for it. The flap had shifted, just enough for the corner of a white envelope to show. It read, "Copy only, do not sign." I pushed it back inside and zipped the bag shut. Back in the dining room, someone started talking about renovations. Someone else mentioned refinancing. Caleb said something about square footage. Tessa called the kitchen quaint. I walked past them without speaking, grabbed my coat from the hook. The front door stuck as always, so I pulled a little harder. No one looked up. Outside, the air was sharp, clean. I walked toward the sidewalk, keys in hand, purse tucked close. Behind me, through the window, I could see them raise their glasses again. I kept walking, one hand curled around the keys, the other closing over the envelope, pressing the paper flat inside the lining. I taped the lid shut. Wrote nothing on the wrapping. No tag. No ribbon. Just brown paper creased at the corners, folded tight. Inside the box, I had placed 3 things. A photo of Caleb on his 5th birthday, missing teeth, frosting on his chin. A ceramic angel I'd kept on the mantel for 20 years. And a certified copy of the deed with my name, dated, notarized. I walked across the street before sunrise. No snow, just cold air that made my joints click. The porch lights were still on, but dimmed. The kind you set on timers to pretend someone's always home. I left the box on the mat, right in front of the door, then walked away without looking back. By noon, it was gone. At 4 o'clock, a notification pinged from the security camera app. I sat down, opened it, and watched. Tessa stepped out with a glass of wine in one hand. She bent down, picked up the box, shook it once, opened the lid. She laughed, turned to someone behind her, probably Caleb, and said, "Look what the ghost dropped off." She lifted the angel, made it dance in the air like a puppet, then dropped it back inside. Caleb didn't even come into frame. She tossed the whole thing into the garbage bin by the steps, shut the lid, wiped her hands. I paused the video. My face didn't move. Not once. I locked the screen, took a breath. No anger, no ache, just space, clear and open. Then I reopened the app, forwarded the footage to Janine. Subject footage, front porch, 12:25 message. This will be relevant. I didn't wait for her reply. I didn't need one. I tapped into my contacts, scrolled to the name that read Caleb, and pressed down. Delete. Confirm. The screen went blank. Just the time glowing in the corner. 4:17 p.m. I set the phone face down on the table. In the kitchen, the light was still on. A quiet hum above the stove. I stood up, took the folder from the desk, slipped the final copy of the deed back inside, folded the flap, sealed it, and walked toward the back room where the older files were stored. I signed in at the front desk. Took the elevator up without speaking. The building smelled like printer toner and lemon cleaner. Janine opened the door before I knocked. She motioned me in. No small talk, just the thick folder already waiting on the table. He submitted a mortgage application, she said. Used the house as collateral. I didn't blink. Janine flipped the folder open. Page after page. Highlighted lines, dates. A signature that wasn't mine, but looked enough like it might pass if no one looked too closely. He claimed ownership. She continued. Filed as sole title holder. But she pulled another paper from the side sleeve and slid it toward me. The county confirmed. Title is clean. Still in your name. Fully. I leaned back. Not far. Just enough for my spine to settle. And the documents. Fraudulent. We flagged them. Quietly. The loan was denied. No official complaint filed yet. She paused. Waited to see if I'd react. I didn't. Instead, I looked at the bottom of the stack. The last form had my name typed neatly along the signature line. What's this standard protection notice, if anything escalates? Just a formality, but smart to have on file. I picked up the pen. Signed without asking more. My hand didn't shake. Then I slipped the pen into my coat pocket. Not Janine's. Mine. Janine wasn't done. She reached into her drawer, pulled another folder. Thinner. Labeled in blue ink, Delaney Group. Invite confirmation. They're hosting a private event next week, she said. Estate Funding Board. Business and Property Leadership North Region. You were named in the original founding trust. They'll recognize you. I didn't answer. Just ran my finger along the edge of the folder, then closed it gently. Behind Janine, the blinds let in soft afternoon light, the kind that stretches long, slow across polished floors. I saw myself reflected faintly in the window. Small. Still. Then I stood, buttoned my coat, took the folder under one arm. Anything else? She smiled. Not unless they push harder. I nodded once. Walked to the door. Opened it myself. In the hallway, I paused long enough to zip my coat all the way to the top. Then I moved forward, the file pressed firm against my side. I opened the mailbox slowly. A single envelope sat inside, thick paper gold trim, my full name printed in raised lettering. No handwriting. Just print. Deliberate. I walked back inside, set it on the kitchen table, sat down before opening it. The seal broke clean. Inside, a formal carved ivory stock, sharp edges. The kind you don't throw out, even after the event's over. Christmas dinner, honoring original investors, featuring Marin Dwyer land contributor, hosted by Robert Delaney Group Properties. December 26th. Rosecrest Hall, 6 p.m. The same venue Caleb once bragged about. You need an invite, he'd said. Only people with real merit get in. I stood up, took my blouse from the hanger, ironed each crease slow. Steam hissed from the collar. I didn't rush. Once done, I set it on the chair beside me, took a sip of coffee, placed the mug down without a sound, watched the sunlight hit the surface. Then I opened my wallet. Inside, folded behind my ID, was the only physical copy of Caleb's fake mortgage application. The one Janine gave back to me after uploading it to the case file. The one with his signature, his edits, his lie. I didn't look at it long, just enough to confirm it was still there, then tucked it behind the invitation. I placed both into the black handbag I hadn't used in over a year, wiped the dust from the clasp, snapped it shut. Outside, the street was quiet. Snow still hadn't come, but the sky looked ready. I went back to the kitchen, rinsed my mug, dried it, set it carefully on the windowsill next to the broken one. The crack still showed, but it hadn't widened. I adjusted it slightly so the handle pointed east. Then I zipped the handbag and set it by the front door ready. On the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection just for a second. The blouse pressed, the coat clean, the crease in my collar smooth. I turned off the kitchen light, walked back to the table, and reached for the second envelope Janine had given me, sealed, labeled, waiting. I stepped through the front doors of Rosecrest Hall and nodded at the host. He checked the list, smiled, and stepped aside. The room shimmered linen tablecloths, tall candles, name cards embossed in gold. I didn't sit right away. Just stood near the center table, the one closest to the stage. 10 minutes later, I heard her voice first. Too loud, too bright. Tessa. She walked in like she belonged. Caleb, half a step behind, scanning the room. They weren't on the list. I knew it. They knew it. But they came anyway. Smiles, rehearsed eyes sharp like they'd make something happen just by showing up. Delaney spotted them, but didn't acknowledge them. Then he turned toward me. Marin, he said loud enough for the room to turn. You helped me build the foundation of this city. I nodded once. No smile. He continued. And someone tried to sell it, without asking you first. Murmurs. Two heads turned toward Caleb. Tessa straightened her back. I stepped forward, unzipped my handbag, pulled out 2 papers, one folded, one flat, placed them on the table between us. I believe this was yours to see, I said. Delaney picked them up slowly, read the top line. His jaw tensed just enough. He nodded once, then looked to the man standing near the coat check. A signal. Silent. Understood. 2 men moved quietly through the room. I didn't watch where they went. I didn't need to. I didn't look at Caleb. Not once. I kept my eyes on Delaney. He met my gaze and gave the smallest nod. Not approval. Recognition. Behind me, I heard Tessa hiss something under her breath. The scrape of a chair. Caleb saying her name too quiet. I walked away. Past the linen. Past the plates. Toward the back table where the coffee urn stood. I poured 1 cup. Took a slow breath. My hand stayed steady. No spill. Someone behind me whispered my name. I didn't turn. I held the cup in both hands and let the warmth settle into my fingers. On the far side of the room, a door opened, then closed again. The noise didn't return. I opened the blinds just enough to see the driveway. 2 cardboard boxes sat near the curb. One was already soaked through on the bottom, sagging against the sidewalk. A lamp stuck out of the top. Tessa came out first, arms full, face tight. She kicked the front door open with her heel. Caleb followed behind, carrying a duffel bag. He didn't speak. The eviction notice had gone out 3 days ago. Janine sent a copy to me and one to them. No drama, just paper. Clear final. Neighbors watched from porches and windows. No one helped. No one waved. Tessa muttered something as she passed the front step again. I didn't catch it. I didn't care. Her voice bounced off the brick and died in the cold. Caleb bent to pick up a crate of mismatched picture frames. He dropped one. The glass cracked. He didn't stop to gather the shards. She shouted his name. He kept walking. I stood behind the blinds. No movement. No sound. Then I let them fall shut. One finger guided the cord down. Smooth. In the kitchen, the house felt quieter than usual. I opened the cabinet. Pulled down a matchbox. Struck once. Lit a small candle I hadn't touched in years. The flame held. On the counter beside it sat a plain envelope. White. Labeled Donation Confirmation, Delaney Youth Fund. I placed it next to the candle. No announcement. No applause. Just there. Outside, I heard a car door slam. Then another. An engine turned over. Hesitated, started. I didn't look. Instead, I moved slowly through the kitchen, checked the window lock, wiped down the edge of the sink. The house had no echo, no emptiness, just air. Even. I poured one glass of water, took one sip, set it down beside the candle. The boxes were gone now. I walked to the living room, picked up the small notebook from the coffee table, flipped to the last page, tore it out. One line, nothing more. Then I folded the paper, pressed it between 2 pages of the book on the shelf, and slid it back into place. I boiled the water, measured the grounds, let the coffee steep longer than usual. No rush. The house didn't creak like it used to. No footsteps above. No cupboard slamming. No muffled voices behind closed doors. Just quiet. Whole quiet. I reached for the ceramic mug, the same one from that morning weeks ago. The crack still there, faint like a scar. I poured slow. Watched the stream. Watched the first drop land. It didn't spill. I lifted the mug, both hands wrapped around it. Warm, solid. My grip steady. No shaking, no tremble. I stepped toward the front door, unlocked it, pulled it open. Cold air swept in, crisp. No footprints on the porch, no packages, no messages, no knock. I left it open for a moment longer than necessary. Let the air push past me. Then I closed it gently, turned the lock again. In the living room, the window pulled in soft morning light. I sat in the chair by the frame, my chair. The one they used to pile coats on when guests came. No coats now, no guests. Just the chair. Just me. The mug sat heavy in my lap. I took one sip. Still hot. Across the room, the tree they didn't help decorate blinked once. Then again. The lights worked fine. I had plugged them in myself the night before. On the table beside me was a single key. No tag, no ring. Just the metal clean and cool. I didn't pick it up. Didn't need to. I leaned back. Watched the street. Watched the wind lift dry leaves and scatter them toward the curb. Empty now. I didn't feel empty. The house felt still. Not quiet from absence. Quiet from choice. I took another sip. Set the mug down on the windowsill. Folded my hands in my lap. Then I closed my eyes, not out of exhaustion, not to sleep, but just to feel the weight of the room. My breath rose once. Fell steady. The mug stayed where it was, and the drop didn't spill.